Hello, my name is Dylan McLaughlin, and I will be talking about Roman crime and punishment. After the Stone Age and the Bronze Age and the architectural genius of the Greeks came the rise of a relatively small city-state, Rome. Rome rose to power by slowly absorbing its surrounding communities. Then, over hundreds of years, it grew to absorb all of Italy, and then, by the height of its power, the entirety of the shores of the Mediterranean. And throughout that entire empire permeated the laws of the Romans. Firstly, before going into any further discussion, we must recognize one fact, that when Rome took over an area, the area would usually still be granted its autonomy in exchange for homage, supplies, military support, ships, or whatever else was demanded by Rome. This allowed Rome to keep a relatively hands-off approach to government, making rebellions much less of a problem, and with also allowing them to extract massive amounts of resources from their conquered lands. This, however, makes the conversation of Rome's judicial system a little tougher because there were technically a bunch of small judicial systems within the Roman Empire that were technically legal but not put in place by Rome and not acknowledged by Rome, but they're still legally there. Anyway, for the purposes of this conversation, I will be discounting those and only be discussing the ones put in place directly by the Romans. The Roman legal system is pretty easy for an American to understand as they're very close. There's a written legal system. The majorities of these laws were written down on 12 tablets, which were put in the forum of every major city in the entire Roman Empire, usually right outside the courts. This is a picture of that. Ta-da. And so these were published in 450 or 451 BC. The exact date is unknown. Both societies, American and Roman, had laws that changed to fit the culture and how society changed. One great example in Roman times is citizenship, which was originally very exclusive and only included the aristocracy, but after the year 212, then became to include everyone who was not a slave. Both societies use punishment to deter crime and use a system of courts and trials to decide that punishment. There's also a legal language in both, meaning that in America you have to speak in English to be recognized in court. However, in Rome, you would have to speak in Latin. So both courts are relatively similar. There was a judge, a jury, and lawyers. You're innocent until proven guilty. The jury decides the verdict, and the judge decides the punishment. However, there are quite a few big differences between the way that these were run. First of all was that lawyers were trained in rhetoric, the art of speaking, and not law. Obviously, I have not been trained in the art of rhetoric. The reason that they were not trained in law, but instead trained in rhetoric, was because there was no evidence submitted. Instead, it was the most moving speech that won. So there was no reason to learn the law, because it didn't really matter. And punishments actually changed depending on social class dramatically. So slaves actually had no rights at all, and in reality their master could do really anything with them, and legally nothing could be done. They were treated as property, and so whatever they did, if they harmed somebody else, then they were treated as animals who harmed someone else. Picture a pound. And so non-citizens had no rights in court at all. And so as a non-citizen, you'd basically just kind of be stuck with your own local judicial system, as mentioned earlier.